Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and every week or so I write a newsletter all about international trends in radio. This one is dated September the 3rd, and I didn't write one at all in August. I did notice that Matt Deegan's newsletter missed an issue at the end of July. He claimed he was busy getting married, which is an excuse that I think I can also use, for I too was busy getting married in August. So there we are. This is also the first newsletter that I have ever sent from an aeroplane. QF 501 I wrote this on. I was somewhere over northern New South Wales when I wrote that bit, and I was on my way to Radio Days Asia. More of that next week in the podcast. And while I'm thinking about decent conferences and events, I should probably mention that Podcast Day 24 is coming. There are in-person events in Sydney, in London and in New York. I'm curating the Sydney event and I would love you to come. It's on October the 4th. Wherever you live, you can find more information at podcastday24.com. Now, in August, there were new record weekly users figures for BBC Sounds. The BBC claiming it's new podcasts that's done it, but the figures don't actually break out podcasts. So, well, do we know that? Well, yes and no. In the release, we learn that there were 177 million plays to on-demand radio and podcast content in Q2 on the app. A further 264 million global podcast downloads on third-party platforms. Now, plays to on-demand radio and podcast content. Who knows how many of that is to podcasts? Let's assume 50%, which I suggest is being rather generous. That suggests 117 million podcast downloads a month overall, which makes the world's largest broadcaster smaller than the New York Times, which has significantly fewer shows. And even if plays aren't downloads, we know how many automated downloads aren't listened to, and that figure then doesn't really change very much either. I do wonder whether the BBC is significantly underperforming in podcasting. It does look that way, it has to be said. Still, BBC Sounds keep adding new things. Latest off the block is a new local station, local to me in England. The nations also get bespoke content, and that's a good move, as indeed anything is there. Elsewhere, I link to a new YouTube video with a man discovering some old Kenny Everett carts and playing them. The latest radar figures appeared while I was off doing other things. Matt Deegan has written extensively about them. It's been noticed that BBC local radio has dropped from 9.1 million listeners in September 2021 to 7.6 million in June 2022, and I was very much looking forward to saying how rubbish BBC local radio was again. But don't think that would be particularly fair, because the 9 million seems to be quite unusual. Pre-pandemic, in March 2020, BBC local radio was achieving 7.7 million. It's now 7.6 million, and in fact there are still more listeners to BBC local radio now than there were in June 2019. So perhaps BBC local radio isn't doing that badly after all. Although I wish it would, because then I can be more rude about it. In Australia, Southern Cross Austereo is doing radio ads with live football scores in them, something that they claim a world first. Amazing technology. A quarter, this is a good figure, a quarter of all podcasts are listened to during breakfast radio. Yes, the traditional time between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., a quarter of all podcasts are listened to during that time. That's data according to Edison Research. If you thought podcasting wasn't a competitor to radio, then think again. I think that's an important figure. It's a good job that I buried it so far down in this podcast. A great story from the US. It seems radio stations could broadcast hacked emergency alerts. Now, I was in Dallas last week and I got an emergency alert at 2 a.m. warning me about flash flooding. But of course I wasn't listening to the radio. My phone jumped into life telling me about it. And I do wonder who really listens to the radio just in case there's an emergency alert. Is the emergency alert system in the US actually not really very particularly, does it have any point anymore? Kind of doubt it. Now, I linked to an interesting piece about Triple J, the youth radio station in Australia. It's from Tim Burrows' Unmade. Triple J's younger audience is apparently deserting it. But where's it going? Turns out it's not just sort of falling off and going onto the internet like you think it might. It's going other places instead. It's worth a read. You'll find it linked in my show notes. Also, linked audio that was once a BBC Radio 4 drama has been remade as a commercial podcast series. I didn't think you could do that. Turns out you can. So if you are a broadcaster or a producer for the BBC and you've made stuff probably 5 years or so ago, you can re-release that now as a podcast, which is exciting. There's a full piece of information all about that doubtless the BBC will give you if you want to do that. Radio particularly benefits from physical buttons in the car, which says research work better than a touch screen. And I also linked to a good piece from Nick Hilton on the decline and fall of the BBC. It's nicely written and well argued as well. Thank you to Richard Hilton, James Masterton and Brunn Audio Consulting for your ongoing support of this newsletter and podcast. I'm very grateful to you. If you'd like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. You can become a member to give regularly or just give a one-off coffee or five. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. And my professional website has more details about who I am, what I do, and whether I can help you further. I'm james.cridland.net is the website address, james.cridland.net. And until next time, keep listening.